On Friday, September 13th, 2002, Jason Paget was attacked. He suffered a severe blow to the head, and in the coming weeks after his injury, along with depression and OCD, he began to see something incredible. He saw tangent lines and shapes in water, in the sun's rays, and life. Dr. Barry Brogard and Dr. Daryl Treffert, after reviewing his scans, assert that his newfound mechanical and spatial skills were a direct result of his brain injury. His particular synesthesia is seeing math. He thinks about it, draws it, solves it, and lives it. He is an acquired savant. Around 5 years ago, my grandfather was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. He started to forget names and places and how to do everyday things. Eventually, I heard of acquired savant syndrome and immediately was intrigued. Ordinary people made extraordinary through brain injury, something horrible and unfortunate made great. I thought back to my grandfather and how his situation turned out quite the opposite. But still, I kept thinking, what if, instead of my brain eventually ceasing to function, I thought about how to make it function better? How could our brains be stronger? The question had been asked by many and solved by none. Acquired savant syndrome, usually spurred on by a central nervous system brain injury, is an enhancement of artistic abilities. Typically, it intensifies music, art, calendar calculating, mathematics, or mechanical and spatial skills. Instead of simply gaining intelligence, acquired savants can begin to visualize images, numbers, and objects within their brain. Their abilities increase to the point that they exemplify better visual perception and visualization than that of the average person, leading to a manifestation of creativity. Almost all other acquired savants have two things in common. 1, their brains can visualize things better than the rest of us, and 2, they owe it all to their right brain. In normal brains, where the left hemisphere is essentially the dominant half, nearly all of savants had left hemispheres that were damaged, decreasing the traditional blockage of systems of perception and visualization located within the right brain. This process of left brain injury and right brain compensation had an outcome: artistically visual abilities that can be seen in every savant. So since acquired savant syndrome is highly linked to right brain strength and power, which is the root of all things creative, how can it be encouraged in everyday life? As far as brain curriculum to promote right brain hemisphere strength, and by extrapolation, savant syndrome, I have found 4 main tenets. The first is learning through visual and visual motor processing. Where the left brain would be accessed during lecture-like lessons, the right brain is stimulated by using visual and motor aids, like that of webs, charts, pictures, hands-on activities, experiments, and simulations. In addition to learning visually, studying and taking notes in a visual manner, complete with pictures, drawings, and graphics, is also an act in which creativity and right brain strength will be accessed. Since the majority of visual perception is centered within the right brain, utilizing these kinds of tools by which to learn and study will in turn enhance the usage, strength, and power of the right hemisphere. When one plays an instrument of any kind, the brain awakens in many new ways. As one's hands, arms, and fingers work the instrument, sensory information is received and interpreted by the brain. While one reads music, the brain also processes a deluge of visual information. It's considered a full-body workout for the brain, one that has been repeatedly shown to have positive effects on one's mental state. It enhances memory function and has been linked to an increase of individual ability to solve problems more creatively. Music remains a vital part to obtain access to the strength and creativity potential that the right brain holds. Contrary to common belief, drawing is not considered something that requires talent. Just like reading, it has to be taught through a matter of steps. Instead of seeing objects and concepts in parts or fragments, the practice of drawing helps us to perceive them in context as part of a whole picture. Whether interpreting a poem or a friend's body language, this type of perceptual thinking is imperative to everyday function. And of course, this type of creative processing is found within the right brain. But often, the left brain impedes on its progress, slowing it down and taking over on jobs it cannot do as well as the right brain. The best example of this is our concept of upside-down drawing. If a picture is being drawn upside down from a model, the left brain will reject the task of naming upside-down images, and will leave the right brain to assume its creative power. It's one of the many processes of drawing that both stimulates and strengthens the right brain. Oftentimes, deep practice is a hard concept to understand. Deep practice is struggling in certain targeted ways to force one to slow, blunder, and readjust. It may sound similar to just regular practice, but its effects are quite different. More likely than not, the proportion of List 2 words remembered will be higher than that of List 1. Many studies conducted by Daniel Coyle in his book The Talent Code record a result of individuals being able to recite 3 times as many pairs of words in List 2 than in List 1. But why is this? To quote Coyle, "Your IQ did not increase while you looked at List 2, but when you encountered words with blank spaces, something both imperceptible and profound happened. You stopped, you stumbled ever so briefly, then figured it out. You experienced a microsecond of struggle, and that microsecond made all the difference. You didn't practice harder, you practiced deeper." To practice deeply is to practice effectively. One, in a tennis practice, could repeat the same serve over and over with minute changes in between and achieve little, but if they were to work in the stopping-starting motion to perfect each part of their serve before carrying it through, the results would be much more promising. This is the essence of deep practice, and it can be utilized in any aspect of life. It works because of a neural insulator called myelin. Since any skill is essentially an impulse weaving through a chain of neurons, myelin intertwines itself around the nerve fibers, essentially increasing the impulse's speed and accuracy. Each correct performance of the skill will introduce more myelin layers around the circuit in the brain, and with each one becomes a higher level of agility and efficiency. This is why deep practice works. To employ all the aforementioned tenets of strengthening the right brain, like learning and studying visually, playing an instrument, and drawing, with the concept of deep practice in mind, would be to make huge strides in brain strength. It would be to accelerate one's improvement, making the right brain circuits fire faster and more accurately, perhaps bringing us all even closer to our own wonderful version of acquired savant syndrome.